wasn't a programmer. He didn't have an engineering degree. But Steve Jobs changed the world anyway. Not with code. Not with circuits. But with vision. Steve Paul Jobs was born on February 24, 1955. He was adopted at birth by Paul and Clara Jobs, a mechanic and a homemaker from California. From a young age, Steve was different. He was curious, intense, and maybe a little difficult. But behind the sharp attitude was a burning desire to change the world. He grew up in Silicon Valley before it was even called that. He loved electronics, calligraphy, design, and Eastern philosophy. He dropped out of college, but kept learning in his own way. And then, something magical happened. In 1976, in a small garage in Los Altos, California, Steve Jobs and his friend Steve Wozniak built a computer. It was simple, but different. They called it Apple. They weren't just building machines. They were building a revolution. The Apple II became a massive hit. And just a few years later, Apple went public. Steve Jobs became a millionaire at 25. But Steve didn't want to be just rich. He wanted to leave a dent in the universe. In 1984, he introduced the Macintosh. It had a graphical interface, a mouse, and a promise to make computers personal. The ad said, "1984 won't be like 1984. And it wasn't. But Steve's intensity often clashed with others. He demanded perfection. He was ruthless with mistakes. And in 1985, he was forced out of his own company. Imagine that. Fired from Apple. The company he built. The dream he started. But instead of breaking down, Steve Jobs went on a different kind of journey. He founded NeXT, a new computer company. And he bought a little animation studio from George Lucas. That studio? Pixar. Under Jobs' vision, Pixar created Toy Story, the first full-length computer-animated film in history. It changed movies forever. Meanwhile, NeXT was struggling. But the software it developed caught Apple's eye. And in 1997, Apple bought NeXT, bringing Steve Jobs back. The timing couldn't have been better. Apple was dying. And only Steve could save it. He simplified everything. Killed off unnecessary products. Focused on design. And then he dropped a bombshell. The iMac. It looked like no other computer. It was bold, colorful, and fun. People fell in love with computers again. Then came the iPod. 1,000 songs in your pocket. Followed by iTunes, the iPhone, and the iPad. Steve Jobs didn't just create devices. He created experiences. He made technology feel human. Beautiful. Powerful. And magical. He became more than a CEO. He became a symbol of innovation. But behind the scenes, Steve was fighting a different battle. In 2003, he was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. He kept working. Kept creating. But his health kept fading. In 2011, Steve Jobs stepped down as CEO of Apple. Just a few months later, on October 5th, he passed away. He was only 56. But what he left behind was timeless. Steve once said, "Your time is limited, so don't waste it living someone else's life." And he lived his life fully. With passion. With vision. With courage to be different. Today, every time you swipe a screen. Every time you listen to a podcast. Every time you create something on your phone. You're using tools shaped by Steve Jobs' vision.